Greetings and blessings, everyone, and welcome to Lights for the Way podcast. We are sponsored by the Blue Star Spiritual Group. My name is James Devon, and joining me today is my co-host, Anita Davies. Now, this is kind of a special show. Our first show was just nothing more than starting at the beginning. And starting at the beginning meant having a show on Project Earth. Now, as with a lot of things, we gain information, we gain insights as we keep moving along on the path. And although I've done Project Earth video before and stuff like that, I've gained more information, so it's a good place to start. Now, the whole purpose around these podcasts is not only to bring different guests who can bring their own flavor of things that can benefit people and connect with people, but it's also about providing information to people in such a way so that it assists them on their own journey and on their own path. And so there's a lot of people out there with their own thoughts and views on things, and it just becomes a jumbled mess, and it really does. Now, on today's show, our focus and our topic is on the Akash or the Akashic Records. Now, there's a lot of people out there who do Akashic readings, or it's claimed that they do Akashic readings. And I will be honest with you, there are some of those people who I would say are authentic, who do, Akashic readings. And then there are those who claim to do it who do not. Part of the problem, of course, is sometimes people will say it's Akashic Records because they don't really have a name or a label that they can use for what they do. And so they use something that they know people can relate to. And other times people will use it simply because that's what they think they're drawing on when they actually aren't. So I'm not condemning anyone out there who may not actually be working with the Akashic Records, but who claims to be doing so. Now, for myself and for Anita, we both work with the Akashic Records. In 2015, I created a reading. I'm the only person that does these. It's called a Personal Akashic Scroll. And Anita also does Akashic readings as well. So we're going to get into this a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about the Akashic Records in a larger sense, if you will, and give you more of an idea of not only the Akashic Records, but how you can actually access them yourself as well. So at this time, how you doing, Anita?
I'm good, thank you, James.
So, out of curiosity, now I've been doing stuff with the Akashic Records for over 20 years. How long have you been working with the Akash? Let's just put it this way: consciously in this incarnation.
Since February this year.
This year.
This year.
Amazing. Now, here's the real question, though. How long does it feel like you've been working with the Akashic Records?
A bit longer.
A bit longer, like in days, weeks, months, years, or lifetimes.
The previous year, I started channeling information. I would just put my mind to questions that were asked and would receive the information through.
Now, because, we're starseeds, we are different. We come from different places. We will have a show at some point on starseeds, but, starseeds, they come from the Pleiades, from Arcturus, from, Orion, Alpha Centauri, Sirius, so many different places. Even Lyra, you brought it through a message from Lyra last night.
That's great.
Posted it in the Blue Star Spiritual Group, so that was really great. People are really connecting with it. I'm actually doing a message at the moment myself. It's going to be kind of a colorful message, I believe. I'm doing different colors for each symbol.
Very nice.
So it's going to be kind of fun. Now, myself, I kind of, now, mind you, I like analogies that I use, and a lot of the analogies that I use come from movies and TV shows that I've seen. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And one of my favorite movie series, and I was really given a lot of stick for this, and I was really given a lot of crap for this through the first couple of movies, and that's the Harry Potter movies. And that's because the Philosopher's Stone or the Sorcerer's Stone and the second movie, the Chamber of Secrets, it was like, oh, why are you watching that? It's a kids movie, and I'm like, no, it's not.
I have to agree there.
And of course, as the series of movies continued, it did become more darker, more adult-like, which is understandable because, of course, the kids were growing up and they were getting older and everything like that. But I always kind of imagine, there's a part of me that kind of imagines a little bit that the Akashic Records would be something similar to like the library at Hogwarts. And you've got your restricted section and you know, different things like this. Now, the first time I found myself going to the Akashic Records, it's like I walked it through a door into like a entryway or foyer. And there were these pictures on the wall behind this desk and this woman that was sitting there, and it was really quite intense. You know, it was the energy was really intense, and it's funny because I don't see, but I trust in my heart and in my, because I'm a feeler and a sensor, so I see in a different way. And I basically got permission from, she's a guardian of the Akashic Records, and I got permission from her to go and look at whatever information I was looking for at that time. And there are, have you found that there are rules to the Akashic Records?
No, you're going to laugh when you hear this. Do you want to know how I actually started reading the Akashic Records?
I would love to hear how you initially started reading the Akashic Records.
I bought a book on how to do it. And I went through this book, and it had rules and regulations, and it gave you a way of going in. And like you, I don't see. And so I went through this rigmarole of stating names and saying what I had to say. And the Akashic
According to
is
the book.
now open. According to the book, I just followed the book, and it was like, what happens now? So I went, hello, and a voice goes, hello, and I'm going, who's that? And I think his name was Master Bron. Can I help you? Well, yes, I'd like to read an Akashic record. I'd like to know about such and such. He says, okay, fine, just a minute, and just comes back with the information. And that's how it happened for me.
You know, and the point of it here is very, very simple. And this is why this show is so important for people to understand. There's a lot of people out there who will tell you that there's only one way to do something. There's only one way that you can access the Akashic Records, or there's only one way you can do this or do that. And there's not. There's multiple ways. It's whatever works for an individual. Now, with the scrolls, I basically access the information, and I gain, the first piece of information I get are the 3 guides, because I tell a person about 3 of their guides. And through that, connecting through their Akashic Records, I connect to the 3 guides that I need to connect with, because the scroll is a message from spirit, and it's for that now moment in time, the choices that they've been making and everything like that. And so it enables me to connect with those guides and to bring through personal messages from each one of those guides, and then I access the records for 3 past lives that are in alignment with the message that the person needs to receive. And so I keep it fairly simple. And generally, I've never been denied access to anything that I need. I don't abuse it though, so I don't go into the Akashic records because I want to find out who killed JFK. I think that's kind of silly anyway.
I think so too.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's like there are restricted sections though.
Right. Well, I haven't come across any barriers yet.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's so much a barrier as it is, you don't have. I think if you were told that you don't have access to a particular Akashic record, it's because the information contained therein is you're not allowed to give it to the person in question.
I would agree.
So
I have not.
I don't think it's a restriction on us
No,
more than because it's the same thing. When we do a healing, like with the Blue Star Healing method that I teach, that you've done the workshop for.
I have indeed. Yes.
The first thing you have to do is ask permission to do the treatment.
Correct. Yes.
And you're asking their higher self. And it's like I've said in when I'm teaching the workshop, I first learned to ask permission when I did Reiki back in 1991. And it was something that was so important, I kept it when I created the Blue Star Healing method. And the reason I did so, because you would assume, well, someone's coming to you for a reading. So because they're coming to you for a reading, I mean for a healing, that means that they should be able to get one. But there have been 4 times that I've been told no.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I've also had a situation where someone's asked me a question in a reading, and I have been told, no, you can't tell them.
But there's always a good reason for that.
Of course, and I've even had it done to me, which isn't fair.
No, it's not, is it?
I mean, I do understand because, and people, you need to understand this. I mean, I've been on this path for 30 years. We all know Anita is fairly new to it as far as consciously, but her gifts are undeniable, and I can assure you of that. But back in like 1989, 1990, I went to 5 different spiritual fairs and had readings done by 5 different psychics, and I had one question. I only had one question I wanted answered. Who am I for real? I thought, simple question, right? And I was so impressed. I got the same answer 5 times. You're someone really major, but we're not allowed to see. Great. So, I mean, when it's not time, so you won't receive that information. Now, here's where I think a lot of people are unaware. The Akashic records that you access, and I think you'd agree with this, and the Akashic records that I access are the Akashic records for planet Earth, right?
Yes, I would agree with that.
When we live a life, an incarnation here, everything about that incarnation is recorded within the Akashic records. And the name on the Akashic records, the actual name, is the soul name. It's not the incarnational name. Although each incarnation has its own section within that soul's Akashic record.
Correct.
If that makes sense. So,
That does make sense.
I mean, you got to understand, it's like it's in quantum time. So, it is a situation where, as strange as it may sound, I mean, it's like I know I realize I'm going back to Harry Potter, and I apologize. But there's an episode where, or in one of the movies, I can't think of the name, the one right off the top of the bat, but Ron's father takes his kids, and he also takes Hermione and Harry to the Quidditch World Cup.
Oh yes, yes.
Right, and so you've got this tent that's probably large enough for maybe 4 people, but when you walk in, it's like this massive home.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of imagined that the Akashic records are like that. It's like they're contained in small devices and whatnot, but then you can just expand it outwards as you need to. It's like everything it's almost like this. It's like you go in, and this is how it's always come to me. It's like you go in, you put in the information you need, and it basically all comes up on a screen. And so it's like having the ultimate server,
Mm,
data server, you know.
yeah.
And
With
so
downloads.
yeah, there are scrolls, actual scrolls in the Akashic records, but for most of the Akashic records on individuals, they are electronically held. And I'm saying this in simply a way that people can understand it. Would you not agree with that?
Yes, it's like a massive database. It's huge. It's bigger than we can really comprehend.
Well, of course. I mean, think of all the different people that have lived on this planet and all the different events that have
That's
happened
correct.
on this planet. But not
Mm,
only that, but all the different extraterrestrial races that have interacted with this planet down through time.
that's correct too.
So the amount of information is astronomical. But now, what most people don't really think about, and I do understand that they don't really think about it a whole lot, because I mean, at the end of the day, it is a situation where we live on planet Earth and we deal with the Akashic records of planet Earth. But every planet has its own Akashic records.
That's correct.
Every galaxy has their own Akashic records.
Indeed, they do.
Every universe has its own Akashic records.
Yes.
And so exponentially, it's like, just think of it. It's like, and I mean, scientists and astronomers, they've been going over this and talking about this for quite some time. How there's got to be billions upon billions of planets. And so each planet has its own Akashic records. And it's basically like, this is how I imagine it anyway, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this as well. It's almost like the synopsis of what has occurred on that planet is what's held in the galaxy Akashic records. And then it's the synopsis of the galaxies that are held within the Akashic records of the universe.
Tier upon tier of information. And it
Yeah.
still all feeds back to one place, which is amazing when you think about it, because it actually starts in your soul body and it travels from there, and then it will be, the data is collected, and then it travels on, and the data is collected again, and it travels on, and so on. It is an extremely complex energy collecting system, which is so complex that our minds, our brains cannot really comprehend how complex. But not only is it stored in those places, it is still stored within us, within our soul.
Well, I mean, as far as our own journey, yes.
Mm, mm.
Which makes it interesting because I mean, it's like I've met people along the journey, who remember lifetimes on other planets.
I have come across some, yes.
Yeah, people who have this soul transfer people.
I've
Knowledge
only met
change.
one person. No, I've met two people.
Well, I'm one,
I know.
but mine is very different because it happened when I was 2 years old, and
Yes, it's,
I mean, it's like it can be rather dramatic when you're an adult and it happens,
I can imagine it would be.
but when you're like 2 years old, it's like, and it's not really a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not really. It's almost like, well, who cares? I mean, it's like, I mean, it's one of those things that it's like you just want to kind of forget about the whole thing because it doesn't really matter, you know.
No, no, no. Well, not at that age, because you're still young enough that the transfer is not as traumatic, and there's not so much to have to comprehend and understand about another person's life and to have to fit in with another person's life. You're still forming and growing as a small child. So if there's any inconsistencies, nobody's probably going to notice them too much. But as an adult, it is much harder to actually take on another persona.
Now, the interesting aspect here is that for a lot of people, I mean, for myself, and we were actually discussing this morning. Both of us, after our last incarnation, went home.
Mm,
Now, when that happens, we actually go beyond the near realms of this world.
we do.
Now, the downside is, or the ramifications of that is, when you stay within the near realms, it's like when you reincarnate, you are picking up all of that information that is specific to you and what you require from the Akashic Records as you incarnate. For us, because we went home after the last incarnation, it's like there's this part of us that remembers, or I know for myself, and I'd like you to speak about this as well, because I don't even know if you've actually thought about this, but for myself, it was like, I mean, granted, I went through a lot growing up that was not pleasant, but I was different. I was really different to other people. I was not like other people. I would see people do things, and a lot of people wouldn't bat an eye, and I would sit there and I'd go, I don't understand. I don't
Okay.
I don't get this. I don't get why you would do this. It didn't make any sense to me. And I dealt with that all my entire life. Did you ever experience that growing up, or in your life?
No, not really. The only thing I ever found is that I was never what I consider a particularly popular person.
Oh, me
Not that
neither.
I think I was unpleasant, but I never had a huge group of friends. I suppose I was probably a bit standoffish, so that was perhaps the same. Didn't mix very well. Didn't mix very well with others. Um,
I know that feeling.
yeah, I know that, like we were talking this morning, when it comes to the Akashic Records, I feel quite disassociated from them. So, although I can very easily tap into anything I want to in my past, there is no interest there whatsoever in doing so. I have done so out of need to balance off what I need to in this lifetime to move forward. But people say, oh, it must be wonderful, what you were doing sort of 300 years ago, how interesting. I'm thinking, no, I'm not even marginally interested in what I was doing 300 years ago. It's been and gone, and it's the past, and it means
But see,
nothing to me.
well, you see, the only, I mean, like I've looked at some of my past lives, and I've got heaps to look at. But the ones that I've actually looked at have been more in line with answering the simple question of who I am.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I've answered that question now, so it's really inconsequential. The only past life of mine that I find really, really fascinating, right? And I find it so bloody fascinating, is because there's an actual painting of me.
I've seen that painting.
It looks just like me,
It does, doesn't
like
it?
like 20
Yes,
years younger, but it looks just like
exactly
me.
like
And it's
you.
like I look at that picture occasionally and I'm like, damn, that is just mind blowing. That was actually the last lifetime that my wife Janice and I actually shared together.
Which that would have been some time ago,
That was in the early 1600s,
400 years ago.
because Anne, which was Janice then, she was literally the very first woman to ever make a living as a portrait painter in England.
Really amazing.
Yeah. And you see, like Charles, who I was in that lifetime. But this is so much in alignment with who we are today, even because like Charles, he actually gave up his job to manage her career and to support her in doing what she wanted to do and what she needed to do.
Mm.
And she actually did some writings, and not very many of them have survived, but she's done some writings that were like extraordinary. You wouldn't even have expected to even read anything like it until maybe the 60s of the
Really.
20th century. They were that far advanced. And I mean, their life wasn't perfect, and they went through their own like financial struggles at times and stuff like that. But they had a good life and a wonderful family, and it was great. There's actually, and I've actually seen this. I've seen pictures of it. I and it's somewhere that Janice and I really, really want to go. It's in England, right? And it's a restaurant dedicated to her.
Oh, really? Amazing.
Yeah, and it's like it has. I don't think they're the originals, but it's got all of her paintings up on the walls
So it would be very familiar, be like going home for her.
for both of us.
Mm.
You know, and
Oh,
so
yes.
that's something that's on the bucket list. But outside of that lifetime, and it's only because there's an actual painting and it looks so much like me in this lifetime that that's the only lifetime that really interests me now, and I'm really not that interested in the lifetime. I just find the painting quite interesting, and it is interesting because I've done past life readings for people for over 20 years. You know, I mean, I actually have the ability. I can look them in the eyes. I think I did this with you in April, and I can tell them about their guides. I can tell them about past lives, and it's one of the gifts that I have, and it's really kind of cool.
It's a life-changing gift. I can say that from April to now, you have completely changed my life around with what you have told me.
Well, I mean, it's you have work to do.
We do have work to do, and that's what it's about. And it's meant to be life-changing for every person that you come in contact with, no matter what way we do it or how we do it. Our job is to change people's lives for the better, to improve their lives, to help them move forward in their lives.
Well, that's what it's about, at the end of the day. So, you know, the Akashic records are there for people to access. Generally speaking, I mean, some people you would have access as far as your own Akashic records and nobody else. Other people have more access. And to be honest with you, when somebody has more access than you, it does not mean in any way, shape, or form that they are more special than you are.
No, it doesn't.
It's this same mentality, and it annoys the hell out of me. It really does, because it's a paradox. Because you get these people who go out there and say, well, everyone can be a reader, and everyone can be a healer, and everyone can be a medium, and so on and so on and so on. And the thing is that on one side of the table, that phrase is true.
It is.
Everyone is capable of doing it. That is true.
Mm.
However, on the other side of the table, it's not true. Because if you incarnate here and that's not your path, you're not going to do it. You're not going to access it.
No, you won't.
Because if everyone could do it, you wouldn't need people like yourself or myself out there doing readings or doing healings or anything else, because no one would need it.
No, they wouldn't do. But
But
hasn't come to that yet.
no, it hasn't. And the thing is, we have completed phase 1 of Project Earth, and we're moving into phase 2, and I can guarantee you that in the next few centuries, everything on this planet is going to change.
Totally. Will do.
Because I reckon in 100 years, they're not going to need people like you and I.
No, they're not, because people will be accessing their own information and connecting in with their spiritual side without our help.
Well, you see, I honestly believe what will end up happening is people will actually be walking and living a spiritual path, and they won't even call it a spiritual path.
No, it'll be the new normality.
It'll just be, this is how things are.
Mm.
I remember watching Star Trek Next Generation. Here we go with the whole TV analogy again. And there's an episode of Next Generation where they come across this spaceship, and they go on board, and it was one of those spaceships that did the whole cryogenic freezing thing. So right after you died, they would cryogenically freeze you so they could bring you out and fix whatever killed you when the technology got to that level or got to that point. Most of the devices had malfunctioned except for 3, and they brought those 3 back, and they had fixed whatever had killed them. One was a woman who was a housewife, who didn't even know that this was slated for her. You know, her husband had done it because she said that her husband probably felt like he couldn't live without her. There was a guy who had been a country singer who had basically killed his liver because of drinking and stuff. And then there was this really, really rich dude, right? This really, really rich guy. And he's just going ballistic. They bring him out, they fix him up, they bring him back, they're all good to go. And he's going ballistic because he's got to call his bank. He's set himself up very, very well. And they're like, dude, there's no banks. well, I've got to call my lawyer. Dude, there's no lawyers. You know, there's no poverty. We don't use money anymore. You know, and near the end of the episode, and I found this really telling. He said, well, it's obvious I've lost my fortune. I've lost everything that I had built up. What am I supposed to do now? And Captain Picard looks at him and he says, what we do now is we do everything. It's all about improving ourselves, bettering who we are. And I think, you know, as I've said in like a previous video and stuff like this, Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek and who was around for a lot of the Next Generation series as well, he got a lot of his information through channeling.
Where else would you get that sort of information from? To be honest, the analogies there are just, it is just the truth, and it's a way of getting the truth across that people will accept, rather than putting it in their faces where they go, oh no, I don't want to hear about that. That's, you know, that's not true. But we can accept this fantasy, which really isn't a fantasy. It's all about realities and illusions, isn't it?
Well, it is.
And what we see as realities.
Yeah, it is, you know. So it's very exciting. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this show up on the Akash. Now, I'll tell you straight up, some of our shows will be, you know, 30, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Some of our shows may be an hour or two, depending upon who we have on the show and everything like that. Now, on our next podcast, which we will do in a few days or whatever, right at the moment, the podcast it's under creation, shall we say. For those of you who listened to the last podcast I was on, which is Moments of Truth, I knew kind of, you know, going into it that was going to be temporary. And it's been a really great learning experience in my time for 3 months at SOC Radio, doing the radio show that I did, which was Spirituality for the 21st Century and Beyond. I've been learning heaps from these experiences. And so we're really working to make sure that this podcast, which is completely spirituality based and everything like that, is going to be something that really benefits everyone who listens to it. So I encourage all of you to hit the subscribe button so that you can be notified of when we have posted a new podcast. For Anita, tell you what, Anita, let's do this because a lot of people don't know of you.
No, they don't.
As you know. So what I'd like you to do is just tell people, what is it that you do?
What is it that I do as an Akashic Record reader?
Well, That's one thing you do. You read the Akashic Records.
I
That's
do. I read the Akashic Records, and my primary objective in reading the Akashic Records is healing the soul. So when people come to see me, I generally prefer them to have a very good idea of where their problems are in their lifetime, what they feel is holding them back. I deal with phobias. I deal with many things. And you will get a very, very comprehensive lifetime. Now, this is only one lifetime you will get, and it takes me anywhere between an hour and a half to do this, and it's a very personal lifetime. So you not only know exactly who you are by name, date, birth, and where you live, but you have a very chronicled events of your feelings, your observations of that life, right through to your death, and feelings that you have brought into this lifetime, the lessons you need to learn, and what you need to close off to move forward. I am a Blue Star healer, and I work with the tonal healing. I use weaving of energies. It's very hard to describe exactly what I do. I work through the chakra system, clearing out the chakras and anything that needs to be done. And from time to time, I will also do physical healings as well when required. The other thing I do, which is mainly just at the fairs, which is something which is very quick, but which is another healing modality, really, is soul-to-soul connections, where I bring in spirit directly from the spirit realms for those who are grieving, and help bring them a message through, a direct message through, to help them understand that, yes, I'm still here. Maybe I'm sorry for what I did, whatever really needs to be brought through, so the people on this side can heal and move on as well. That's me.
and I can assure you that she is amazing at what she does.
Thank you.
No, she really is. She's done a reading for me that was beyond amazing, and then she did our Blue Star Healing Workshop in Christchurch, and she definitely is a total natural at doing it. Now, for myself, I'm doing the Personal Akashic Scrolls, which is basically about a 6 to 6.5 page reading in Word. I do personal guidance sessions. I do life coaching, spiritual life coaching, as well as professional life coaching around career, relationships, as well as self-esteem issues. If you would like to contact either myself or Anita, please give us an email at lightsthewaypodcast@gmail.com. Or if you have any ideas that you'd like to share with us as far as shows that you'd like us to do, or information that you'd like us to focus on, also shoot us an email at lightsthewaypodcast@gmail.com. And we are always open to hearing this. So, from Anita and myself, many blessings to all of you, and have a wonderful, blessed day.